Eric, you okay?
It's just space is cold.
Well, it is cold, but usually we have a heater too, and the heater's not. Hey guys, welcome. Gonk has us here back live. Everything's good now, but we do have a few complications that are going on, so that's why we're a little late.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Eric's a little cold because we don't have
Gonk,
heat.
Gonk was also cold.
I think Gonk's okay.
I think we've unfrozen him though.
I think he's okay now. He's good. How's everyone doing? Welcome. Glad you guys could join us. Today we're gonna be talking about Padmé.
Padmé Amidala?
Yes.
Oh, Padmé Nabiri?
Yes.
I don't know which one's more correct. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna just stick with Amidala.
I'm feeling a little lukewarm.
Padmé Skywalker.
Hey, that works too.
Does that work too?
What if?
But no, we had our the final trilogy, the final book in the trilogy of the Padmé books.
Yes, we did.
And we also have another group of conversation with Padmé we want to have, and then Eric had something else that we're going to be covering today.
Yeah. And I say we just start with it.
We start with that?
We start with it, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start up with that then.
All right, Aaron. I think about 3 weeks ago, StarWars.com had an interview with one Ian McCraig. I think
Ian
is how you
McCraig.
say his name, who is an artist, a concept artist. He is the one responsible for, like when you hear that Lucas told an artist, draw your worst nightmare for Darth Maul. Like, I want him to be your worst nightmare. Just draw that for me. So this guy, Ian McCraig, drew his worst nightmare, and Lucas looks at it and goes, draw your second worst nightmare. That was
too scary?
That's terrifying. So
Okay.
he's the guy who's responsible for Darth Maul's design and also very responsible for Padmé Amidala's design.
Okay. So this is kind of like when, hey, I need to figure out what Star Wars looks like. He gets Ralph McQuarrie to, draw and give me some ideas.
And they had a piece of philosophy while designing stuff for The Phantom Menace that I found really fascinating. And apparently, Lucas was involved in this too, is that they didn't want to take something from just a culture that you would find on Earth unless it popped up in multiple cultures.
Okay.
Like Padmé's face paint can look like a Japanese geisha. It can also look like a Mongolian bride, and it can also look like the Queen of England. In terms of bringing something that we kind of recognize as cultural to Naboo. And I like the idea that it's not universal until it pops up in multiple cultures, and thus is worthy of not worthy, but thus appropriate to put into Star Wars.
Okay,
that's a really interesting way of going about things. Yeah,
interesting.
But the most surprising thing found in that article is this section that I'm going to read out.
Okay.
All right. He said, for a time, because he obviously there's actually a really, really funny story about George Lucas, because he hired the artist, and then he's also finishing up the script.
Sure.
This story right here is, as George Lucas worked on the first draft of the screenplay, he would visit the artist weekly and share a new installment of the developing saga. This is quote, George would lean back in his chair, close his eyes, and tell us the next part like it was a bedtime story, said McKeag, I think is how you say his name.
He would close his eyes.
Yeah, George would.
Okay.
He'd always stop when we were dying to know what happens next, and he'd get up, laugh, and walk back downstairs, leaving us with this new nugget of the story. I love the idea that he would, come in, tell them, it's George Lucas telling the story. It's got to be pretty...
Sure.
That's got to be a significant thing to.
And then
you're hearing this story from the first time from the man's lips.
Yeah. Qui-Gon and Anakin are making their way back to their ship when a shrouded figure attacks them.
So
all right, guys, that's it for today. We'll see you next time. No, wait, what happens?
Yeah, right. So inevitably, what that means is that you're going to be seeing some first draft stuff that doesn't make into the movie. And this story, I think, took the internet by storm a little bit here, because it says, for a time, of the two Jedi, the older Jedi was named Obi-Wan, and the younger Jedi was named Qui-Gon. It was very poignant at the end as Obi-Wan dies and Qui-Gon defeats Darth Maul. He stays with his master as he passes away. He not only takes his master's quests, but he literally takes on his name. Qui-Gon becomes Obi-Wan, and that's why when you have Alec Guinness in A New Hope, he puts his hood down and says, Obi-Wan, that's not a name I've heard for a long time. because he's not Obi-Wan. His real name is Qui-Gon. And then
Interesting,
right
okay.
at the end, George changed it.
Just before, like,
Just before they changed it. That's an interesting thing. I'm, for one, glad it didn't happen. One, because I'm biased and I like the way it is.
Well, sure, that's just like we have it
Yeah.
the way we have it.
Yeah.
But what would I have thought if I didn't have that
Yeah.
way? And the Obi-Wan that I know initially was Qui-Gon, and he changed his name because of it.
Yeah.
It kind of also, in a way, goes with Anakin becoming Darth Vader, right? Where you have the same person taking on kind of a new persona.
Yeah.
Like that kind of mirrors that a little bit of like,
bit.
this is the death of my master,
Yeah.
and I will take on his quest, and I'm going to take on his name.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting.
It is. I think it's interesting.
I wonder what differences we would have had, especially in like different expanded canon aspects, like the Kenobi series. You know, like what would that have been like if that was the case?
Yeah.
And how would it have been more confusing if like I mean, if you had all of it the same, the voice of Obi-Wan was like, you know, Anakin, but you know that's the Obi-Wan that he knows.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting. I don't know.
It would be funny if, like, Obi-Wan, your old master has returned from the dead. Obi-Wan. you said my name. No, other Obi-Wan. Oh, yeah, okay. I get it now. That makes things a little awkward, I guess.
Yeah. So I do wonder, like, what would have happened in the later movies and stuff from there,
Yeah.
or what would have happened in other series or anything, you know?
I started by evoking what if, and that's a pretty crazy what if. What if they kept that in the script, and what would have changed? How I would have thought about things. I wouldn't have even known it was different because it would have been it.
Yeah, that's just what it would have been. So, like, looking at it now, it's like, I don't know if I would have liked that, but that's also having it been what it is now. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
I would have been like no,
if
never mind. I'd be like, you're okay. That's Obi-1, and then you're Obi-2.
Sure, Obi-2 Kenobi.
And Luke could be Obi-3.
It's the same idea of like if in Empire it wouldn't have been a reveal of I am your father.
Yeah.
It would have been like, no, I killed your father.
Yeah.
Like that's just what it would have been.
Sure.
How much has changed from that being his father instead, and you know.
Yeah.
Well, everything Alec Guinness said in the first movie was that Darth Vader killed Anakin Skywalker. That's what it is, right? Like that would have been like I feel like that. No, that's not what it is. But that's because that's not what it is.
Yeah.
And I think I wouldn't have liked that. But
Agreed.
who knows what the story would have been separate?
Did you ever hear what was said on script instead of "I am your father"?
Obi-Wan killed your father. I think is what
Obi-Wan
it
killed
says,
your
right?
father is what's said on. But then they
No.
yeah,
I was
exactly.
like, man, he really didn't like. He really
Which
cared for
I
Obi-Wan.
mean, I think is also kind of an interesting story. I mean,
Sure.
it's way different than the one we got, but that would be kind of an interesting story.
Yeah, it's one of those like, who do you trust?
Yeah.
Are the Jedi evil? Are the Jedi not evil?
Yeah.
Like, it kind of would have dabbled into that a little bit if that was the case. And then, well, why did Obi-Wan kill Anakin Skywalker?
Yeah.
But also, I mean, in a way, that's kind of what happens, right? From a certain point of view. But then Anakin / Darth Vader goes, no, I killed him.
Yeah.
You
didn't kill
It's like,
Anakin.
I don't know. He
Skywalker.
left you for dead on Mustafar, and you were no longer Anakin Skywalker, you know? Like,
Yeah.
it's that wiggle room. So, like, I think you could have gone that way a little bit, but that's not how Anakin wants to view it. That's not how Darth Vader wants to view it.
Yeah.
I killed Anakin Skywalker, and I am now Darth Vader.
Yeah. We always talk about how A New Hope has that scene of Obi-Wan answering, hearing the question, answering the question of what happened to his father, Luke's father, because it's such a linchpin of generational Star Wars experience.
Yeah.
It changes each iteration. It's like a different feeling. And now I can think about like, oh man, now I have like the what if stories in there as well. So interesting. But yeah, I read that and I was endlessly like, what? Oh, that's so like one, I don't really like it, but I probably only don't like it because it would have changed.
It changes
things
what I
for
know,
me,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, everything would have been different, I feel like, from
Exactly.
there, at least to some extent.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have had a lot of things very similar.
Sure.
The main movies could have been fairly similar.
Yeah.
But because of that being a change, like
I wonder, because I was always into Star Wars, but I got really into Star Wars when the special editions came out. So I never personally had like too much like upset feelings when things were changed in those movies, the original movies, as maybe some older fans. But if like a special edition of the prequels came out and they said, "Oh, we're actually going to do that," I'd be real upset. Like, wait, what?
Sure. I don't think there's been too much done in the special editions of the original that were like maybe that drastic, like where it's very story changing. I think the biggest one's the Han shooting first
Greedo
thing, right?
That's be the biggest one, yeah.
I mean, adding in Jabba the Hutt, I don't think
Yeah.
vastly changes a whole lot of the story, you know?
I mean, yeah, they filmed stuff for it, you know. It's fine.
Yeah, like it was part of the plan they were going for, but I'm trying to think of all the changes and stuff because it's been a long time since I've seen the original
ones
trilogy.
Is, I feel like is Han and Greedo, and then probably Jedi rocks.
Yeah, but it doesn't change the story either, though. You know,
I mean,
like,
sure, it doesn't. It's just a big change. I mean, you could say the ending, I suppose, the new ending.
The ending having like Hayden instead of Shaw.
Sebastian Shaw,
right?
Yeah, you might be right.
That might be, but also like I get the idea of why, and also like having the prequel and stuff in there. I remember being a kid and being like, I don't know who the hell that is, you know, like you don't see him that much, and here now there he is with hair. He's not all pale. I mean, he's blue, but he doesn't look like the guy I just saw with the mask off, you know. Because of all the makeup and what Vader looks like now or what Anakin looks like now. So I remember being like, who's that guy?
Yeah.
There's Obi-Wan, Yoda, and some dude, you know? Like, I remember thinking that when I was younger.
I also love and I'm jealous of being able to watch something as a kid and, like, fully not understanding, like, one part of it, but just accepting it. Man, I don't care. I loved everything else.
Sure.
You know? It's hard for me to do that these days. Now I focus on the one thing I don't know.
Yeah.
Or I don't understand.
But no, I like Jedi Rocks. I think was a great change. I love the coming into Mos Eisley, like all those kind of things are really, they're really cool.
Yeah.
The beak on the Sarlacc, like that's a change.
Yeah,
I don't think it changes that much.
The Mos Eisley one definitely, because when you watch the original, you're like, oh my god, Mos Eisley's a gas station.
Yeah, there's not that much, but this like you go into it and you see a lot more and more creatures, and it feels more lived in and bigger, you know. So I like that, but the overall change of the story isn't there. But if they did a prequel special edition, you're like, you know what? His name was Qui-Gon now. We're just flipping that. I'd be like, what? You can't do that part. But having Darth Vader go, no, doesn't change as much as I think flipping his whole name to be like, well, actually, you know what? His name was not this ever. Or he went by it in honor of, I guess, you know. But I think also the idea of like I haven't heard that name in a long time makes it more weird that he's going by Old Ben. You know? Like, why pick Old Ben then if your name never, like your name was never officially Obi-Wan, it was Qui-Gon. Why aren't you like Old Gon or Old Jin or, you know, something like that?
Yeah, sure.
And then it's a little bit more separate. Yeah. I don't know.
No, I get you.
So I'm glad that he swapped it and went back to just, that's Qui-Gon, that's Obi-Wan.
Be fun maybe to do like a whole segment that's just like first draft stuff you didn't know about.
Yeah.
Yeah. What and then what, like how does that change the whole story and we do our own what if?
Yeah. I was in the Discord the other day and we were talking about remakes and stuff, and it got in the conversation of just being like, well, remakes and stuff are fine because at least then like you always have the original you can always go to. But I was like, unlike in Star Wars, I hadn't really thought about it for a while, but like talking about like the special editions and stuff, like I'm like, there's nowhere I can really go, I don't think, to get what the original release looked like. It's all just whatever the most
not official yet.
No, there's no official release for it. There's no DVDs. It's not on, you know, in the extras of Disney Plus or any of that kind of stuff.
Which you figure would be super easy to do.
Yeah,
you know,
like there's something like I think about that would be really cool to be like, hey kids, you know what you never saw? I want to show you the original. Here's what the Wampa used to look like.
I mean, I'm pretty sure. I think this is true. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that written into the agreement of the sale to Disney, he wrote in like you can't show the original.
Yeah, probably. You can't show that. You can't show the holiday special. You can't do any of those. I don't ever want to see those again. Caravan, you can do that thing. You know, whatever you want. But no, I was just thinking about that the other day, where
or a legend or something. But I feel like I've heard that before.
But and I know like, well, you know, here's where the canon is now. This is what it is, and we've made a few changes, and that's where we're at with it. But some of it makes me wonder if like you said, would we ever get a prequel special edition? Did that release, you know, back in the day, our technology wasn't as good for the original trilogy to maybe capture the full vision he had, whereas in the prequel, it was much closer to what he wanted, you know? Like, would there ever be like a special edition for that? And
I get you.
How I think I'd be interested in seeing like, oh, here's a revamped version of it. It depends on how much it would do and change and stuff, you know?
It's weird. Like,
I don't want it to be a lot more CGI, though.
No, I understand.
But what else do you do?
But, like, is it weird that my standard would be, okay, Lucas did it for the original trilogy. Well, those are his movies. It should only be Lucas that could do it for the prequel trilogy. Those are his movies. So and then if you're going to do it for 7, 8, 9, You got to go to J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson then.
I get what you mean.
It's like, well, those were their movies.
Sure.
Only they should be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because Lucas does that because he has his adage, like, movies are never finished, they escape.
Sure.
Or, like, I know I've heard before, like, one of the secrets of art is knowing when to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like you can't just go forever. Eventually
Yeah.
you have to be like, this is where it's done.
But this was a man who, from the beginning, said what is on screen is not what was in my head. And I respect that. Like, eventually, he's just like, I got $5 million. I'll just do it.
Yeah.
And then he did it for the DVD releases. And then
The Blu-ray.
And then that was sold. Well, yeah, it was the Blu-ray. And then it was sold to Disney. And then when they put it on Disney Plus, there were new versions, like McClunky. And then people were like, McClunky, where's that come from? Who added this? Lucas isn't in charge anymore. And they were like, he made the change before he left.
It's what's in our contract, and we had to add McClunky.
Yeah.
Which that one I never understood. I don't
Yeah.
get what that was really like. I didn't think I was like, oh, now I get it.
I know, but I'll never forget it.
I guess,
You know?
yeah. But no, sequel trilogy. I've often thought of like, what if Disney did a special edition? I know a lot of people didn't like the sequel trilogy. Like there was a lot of people that talked like just like I don't want it, and then there was like a whole thing about like they're gonna remake a new one. They're gonna discredit all that and just make a new sequel trilogy.
Sure.
I was like, well, you could just special edition it.
Yeah.
Make some changes to make it maybe flow together a little better or something or whatever it is. And there's a few things in my head I'm like, I would do this, this, and this, But I don't know if they'll ever do it. But
me,
because George did it with the original trilogy, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility
Yeah.
to do it to the sequel trilogy either.
I think, I mean, yeah. Well, I would also want to give it a little bit of time for the sequel trilogy. The prequel trilogy, I think at the very least, being able to figure some way to upscale the resolution of the video effects, because especially 2 and 3 were shot on digital, so they're only ever going to be really 1080p files. You can like AI upscale stuff, but the better you can make that look good, I mean, the better those movies are going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw people talking not too long ago on somewhere. They were like, man, this render of the Galaxy Opera House in Episode 3, like outside, is so amazing. This was in 2005. And like, yes, complete CG look, It used models and stuff as well, but it was gorgeous. Then the next shot is Anakin, just walking in a hallway, and it's not very well rendered, It just doesn't look great because you're immediately putting a person in it, and now you have real life compared to this, the CG. The further we get away from that, the more that will become more apparent. At least for me, it was still magic when I was a kid, but you see it every once in a while.
Oh yeah,
that's what I would want, I guess. In a
same thing happens
special.
going back watching old movies in general, where like of the time, this looked, this was the best. This was peak. Me playing Wave Race 64 on my N64 back in the 90s. Was like, this is the best the video games are ever gonna be, And you go back now, and you're like, that doesn't look as good as it used to.
Sure,
but you've seen so much other stuff and what it can be now,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'll be curious to know what the 80s into when did special editions come out for the original trilogy?
90,
it must have been in the 90s, right?
Like
so
96, 97.
About 20. It was between 10 to 20 years, I guess, right before he started releasing a special edition of stuff. So, I don't know. We're at that point for prequel stuff.
Yeah.
But like you said, that was George, and I think he's done.
Yeah.
So, maybe you give 10, 20 years on the sequel trilogy, and maybe people are like, you know what, let's add a couple things that we didn't think about before or something.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess it depends on, like, is what we have what their vision was, or did something escape and you could do it differently? Because I feel like that's what George's was.
Yeah.
I can't actually do this stuff with what I can do in the 70s and 80s.
I get what you mean. Like, we are in the era where, like, if you can imagine it,
you can do quite a bit.
Some amazing artists have worked very hard to get us to that point.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, even in the prequels, Lucas is like, we don't have these computers can't look great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make them look great, and now they all look great.
Yeah, you can imagine quite a bit.
Yeah. Which I imagine is his biggest critique of those movies is that you're able to pull off everything you tried.
Yeah.
Try to do something you couldn't do.
Yeah.
That's what film was for him. So that's why I'll always love him as a filmmaker.
Chat looks like it says 97 is when the special editions came out, which I remember getting like the case, all 3 VHSs, and like that's what I watched when I went to bed. Oh, I know because I have posters on the wall. But no, that's an interesting tidbit for some of the. I wonder if
Yeah, I thought
there's
it was
more things like that come out because it'd be cool to know like what was some of the original ideas. It's always neat to hear like some of those and.
I love that this article came out 3 weeks ago for us, but it's something I just didn't know about the movie for 20-some years.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to be moving on from the Phantom Menace era to slightly after the Attack of the Clones era. I say we jump into our book discussion.
The book? Yeah. Yes. All right. Well, what did you think of the book? This was the third Padme book. This was Queen's
Hope.
Hope. Yes.
By E.K. Johnston. Now, this is the third in a trilogy, though the trilogy isn't necessarily chronological, right? Like, because we have the Leia book, that comes later and stuff like that, like the same author and stuff. But
sure.
So yeah, this takes place directly after Attack of the Clones, and then also something that I read too is that like this author and Mike Chin, who did Brotherhood, made sure that because their things take place really close together, they fixed a little bit of detail so they'd work together well.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
This one should be relatively close to Brotherhood, which we covered that one already, and that was felt like a first Clone Wars adventure kind of thing. Yeah. And this is like just before like Geonosis has happened. Yeah. But we haven't quite gone all the way into the Clone Wars yet, and it's a pending an impending doom kind of thing, right?
So I want to talk about this book, but I feel like I'm also going to be talking about just like this trilogy as well, like this Padme and what it does for me and everything.
Okay.
But yeah, in terms of the book, I did kind of feel this almost the same exact way as I did the other two that we've had with Padme, in that I'm really enjoying what I'm reading. I'm really enjoying the world building and the relationships it's building for Padme and what is the Queen's Shadow and the Queen's Hope, the handmaidens. I think it's awesome. But I still hold that nothing really happens. Like, there's no, like, antagonist for these books. Like, there's not much of a plot for the books. I'm not saying, like, and thus it's bad. I just think it's interesting that, like, I've gotten to the third book now and I've accepted the format,
Sure.
But there's still parts of me that it's like, okay, I guess that's the end. That makes sense,
I think it's, it's like, I don't know if I can say it exactly, because like Revenge of the Sith had a book, for it, and I think some of the movies have had books of the movies, right? Yeah. This is like tangent reading, like it's like getting a better glimpse into Padme and other characters that are around the movies that I don't always get, because I
agree with you.
In preparing for this, I was also like, because we were going to talk about Padme more, and I was like, I want to watch more Padme. And I was like, what Padme is in the movies? And I watched a video that was like meant to be like all of Padme in the prequel trilogy.
Sure.
And the whole video was like 21 minutes long. Yeah. And I was like, is that all that Padme's in there? And I'm like, it felt like most, if not all, of her scenes in this video that I was watching through. And I was like, it's crazy, because like there's Anakin, Obi-Wan, there's fights, like Padme's character isn't really like while she is a fighter, like she's not usually in like the action scenes and the lightsaber fights, which I mean that's kind of part of what really makes Star Wars. But she's in some real good scenes too. But I think most of it was like her dialogue scenes, not necessarily like her and Panaka running through through Theed and blasting droids and trying to get to the throne room, But I think not having her in the movies as much, having these books too to really get into her mindset, and you get a little bit before the movies.
Sure.
Getting the idea in past books of like why and how the handmaidens were brought in and that kind of stuff.
Which
I thought was really
I think
great.
Is fascinating.
My favorite part of this book, while I love the Padme stuff, I think my favorite part of this book is Sabe.
Agreed. There's to the point where like I got to the end of the book and I'm kind of like, are these Padme books? Or is this, because of who Sabe is, she is necessarily the most important character, secondary to Sabe?
Sure, yeah. Like, she is important, and Sabe wouldn't be where she's at without Padme being there. But I really enjoy the Sabe story through all of these, I think, and who she becomes and who she's trying to be and trying not to be. This book covers the last time Sabe, I believe so. I mean, maybe it's not, but I assume it's the last time Sabe pretends to be Padme Amidala.
Sure.
And her, I don't know, her journey and then like acceptance as to what she wants to do in this book. Like it's kind of like a I don't know. It's kind of like, what was it? The first book, whenever we had the handmaidens kind of coming together.
Yeah.
And there's lots of times of them talking and they're like doing hair and they're talking about what's going on, trying to make plans and all this stuff. And then you get to this one and there's so much of like, Padmé's like, I don't know if I should call them. I don't want to bother them. I have my own secrets. I can't tell anybody.
Like, there's distance now. They've grown apart.
Yeah. And this one here felt like, especially with Sabe and Padmé, of like we're adults doing our own things now. We're not necessarily kids. And we might not be really get to see each other anymore. Yeah. And there's kind of like a weird sadness in there of being like you've grown apart or you've had to grown up to where we don't get to like lay in bed and talk about boys or talk about, whatever world-ending stuff is going on or whatever not world-ending stuff is going on.
I agree.
And I'm like, it's kind of sad.
I very much value that. Because, this is also something that we'll get into because later we're going to be doing our top 5 Padmé moments, right? We'll get into this, is that I feel like Padmé never gets a chance to act her age. Like, she's 14 in the first movie, Like, does that, all of her scenes, does that feel like a 14-year-old? It doesn't. It feels like it's at least an early 25-year-old wrestling with huge responsibility and stress, Yeah. I love that these books highlight and kind of give her, like scenes with her girlfriends, but it's still, she has all this stress and all this responsibility, but at the very least she feels like she's acting her age in a way that's not condescending, but enhances the character.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, I get what you mean.
It's like I get like her high school stories and her high school friends, and then she'll kind of move on.
This is kind of what she gets from that. I almost think it's in a way almost worse than like she never gets to act her age.
Yeah.
As I was reading this and looking into stuff for like top 5 Padmé moments and stuff, I kind of think that she never gets to do things for herself. Like she becomes a queen at the age of 14, and then like she's looking out for like this whole planet. She becomes a senator. Like there's all these things that like it's always about these people in trouble. It's always about making sure these people are taken care of. It's even watching out for her handmaidens and stuff. And there's so much like from the age of 14 that it almost can never be about Padmé.
Yeah.
It's about everybody else.
And that, I mean, that must be, I know that we're kind of reverse engineering it, but like that must be why she finds her relationship with Anakin so passionate. It's like, that's her. Yeah. Nothing else in her life is just Padmé except for her relationship with Anakin.
And this book kind of talks about
and
that
it's
too.
Secret.
Where like Sabe and them like it's like, well, if she said that if she ever fell for somebody, it would be I can't remember what the line was. I don't know if it was dangerous, but it would be hard. It would be heavy, you know, like it would just be like that's just what she goes into. And like this book covers the wedding of Anakin and Padmé, and like I think it is one of the times that she, one if not the only time that she does something for herself. Where like I love this scene where, she was talking about, she wasn't talking about anything. She was all alone, getting her veil, which I think Yane did for her. And then she's putting on her dress, and she comes to the point of like, I have a bunch of buttons to do on this dress, and I can't. Like, how am I going to do this? I usually have someone help me do this, and how am I going to do it alone? But she gets to that point where she's thinking about Anakin, and she's like, I want to do this. I want to marry this guy. And she's like, I'm going to get in this dress one way or another. Yeah. And this is like the first time of her trying to, I felt like, really do something on her own for herself. For her. Because this is what she wants. And I just really like the scene of that. And like, I also, when rewatching some different things, I was like, I went to the wedding and watched what her veil and what her dress looked like. Yeah. And I was like, oh man. And when I was watching, I'm like, Yane made that. She made that veil up there. That's so cool, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, again, the strength of generational Star Wars stories is that you now have two different ways of watching that scene.
Yeah. So it was really, really cool to have that kind of moment there. But yeah, it's just, the whole book, I love the Sabe part. I love how much Padmé's trying to question and debate on who she can tell this secret to, because she's used to not telling secrets to these handmaidens. Yep. And they also covered like the other handmaidens she brought in that are like, well, they don't need to look like you. They don't need to do the same things that we had to do before.
They need to be actual handmaids.
They just need to be what handmaids are supposed to be. And I was like, okay, that's interesting and makes sense too, because she has some in some of the movies that are not, it's not Sabe or Yane or Corday or any of them, because they had to move on. I also really enjoyed Sasha.
Yeah.
Sasha in the first book was the one who got caught trying to pass the like quilted messages that they had and went through an actual torture scene.
Yeah.
And in this one, they really talk about like what she's doing and how she wears these scars. Like, she has 2 types of makeup that she does, and one like prominently shows the scars. Like, this is what I did for my world kind of thing. And I thought that was
ultimate, like, hey, I understand your pain tool.
Yeah,
for her, to relate to somebody.
I took this for people, and I understand what it's like. And her story was interesting, trying to help, because there's like the systems around Naboo, and there's like a contract they have where it's like, hey, if Naboo comes into trouble and needs help, you have to give them whatever they need.
Yep.
And she's like, well, that doesn't seem fair.
Sure.
And they're like, yeah, it doesn't sound fair either. So they came to kind of an agreement and solution to that. But the agreement they came to also sounded like it would benefit Palpatine in the long run later, which I was like, well, dang, man, that kind of sucks.
Well, Palpatine said, like, you know, like if it doesn't benefit him one way or the other, it'll go away.
Yeah, sure. Which having Palpatine in here was really cool too.
Yeah.
It's always nice to see like little moments when he pops in and does stuff too.
Especially because I feel like in the first book we would get Palpatine moments, but not from his point, not from Darth Sidious's point of view. And I remember saying, like, man, could you imagine if someone they found just this book, you know, and they were like, man, I don't know what's going to happen next in the Star Wars story, but that Palpatine seems like a good dude. On this one, you can't really do that anymore.
No, they don't. I did like that he recognized that this is not Padmé.
Yeah, pretty quickly.
Like, oh, okay.
Whenever you were reading like Sabe's part, did you think he didn't recognize? You think he was fooled?
I don't think so.
She, you know, it's revealed later that 100% yes, he knows.
Nice to see you for the first time,
yes,
kind of thing.
The way
right?
he said it, I was
it's been
just
so
like,
long.
He must immediately no. He's the ultimate chameleon,
and he lets her know immediately,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
'Cause it's like, oh, well, okay.
Yeah, it must be like a toddler, like in war for him, because it's like, this is what you do to hide from people. You use someone else.
Yep.
You don't know how to do it when it's just you.
Yeah. Why don't you just be like me?
But I also liked how much he was annoyed when dealing with her.
Yeah.
You know, so he didn't really get what he sounded like he didn't get what he wanted, which must be a scary thing to hear from Darth Sidious.
There's a small mission that Anakin and Padme do, which I thought was interesting.
Like before their wedding.
Just before the wedding day.
Like,
it's like, well, we were planning on a sunset wedding anyway, so let's get that done real quick before then, you know? Meanwhile, 3PO's like, freaking out about it. But I thought that was interesting. There was a little bit kind of tied to Newt Gunray being involved and the separatists forming and all that kind of stuff happening. But then there was like another mission that took trying to save like hostages and stuff. And it was taking clones with them. And I liked that one. I thought that one was a fine little story that they did.
Yeah.
But then there was like a secret like messenger guy who was a Nemodian.
Yeah.
And I don't
something.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know, is this just a thing for this book, or is this something I should recognize from something like that? Because I didn't pick that out to be from anything. And then later on, Palpatine was like, oh, interesting. He's like, I have to kill that guy, you know?
I love grumbly Palpatine.
So,
son of a bitch.
So that there. Yeah, right. He's like Joe Pesci from Home Alone.
Yeah. I love the idea. There's a Nemodian and a group of Nemodians that actually don't want to be doing this stuff. I mean, whether it's a matter of, you know, because they always talk about risk and reward, and they're doing stuff that's not high risk, not high reward, and you know, so like their motivation still could be selfish, but to the point where like they're trying to please Padme and they're helping her in her secret mission. You know, I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I like the idea that it's not just. There are heroes on both sides, as we read in the crawl.
Yeah, and in the Trade Federation, there's like, well, people are going to agree and people are going to disagree with this, you know?
Because when I see the Trade Federation, I immediately am biased against them.
There's the bad guys,
there they
right?
are.
Yeah. Since episode 1, that's what it was. It doesn't matter if it's Newt or Lot Dot or you know whoever. You're like, they're bad guys.
Sure.
But no, having this there was like, no, like they're not all bad, and some of them like, hey, you know, I want to work with you. We want to figure this out.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. And I don't know if that's going to be any more of a plot that we don't know that pops up in like another book or anything like that.
Sure.
But it was just one of those things. I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that's what was going to happen.
Yeah. And then we did have Nemodian stuff in Brotherhood, which, as I said, ties
that was
into the
the
next stuff.
assassin person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool too.
Yeah.
I did like that.
And that's where we kind of learned about, at least I kind of learned about the Nemodian like risk reward system of how they do things. I just had something else too. What was it? Lost it. Oh, found it. Lost it again. Go ahead.
Damn it, Eric.
I didn't find it.
I really we were talking about like Sabe
Yeah.
leaving, and like the last conversation they had I thought was really good. Like it builds upon like her learning the secret, because there's a time whenever Sabe's like in her room chilling, well, in Padmé's room sleeping and stuff.
Padmé's a secret mission. They need to know that they have to make sure that she's not going to be missed from the Senate.
Yep.
Sabe comes in the first time too. They haven't done this in a long time.
No.
And I understand why. It's kind of screwed up that they do the impersonation thing while she's doing senatorial work. I think it's way more easy when it's queen work.
Sure.
Senatorial works, I think, is a little more iffy if that's okay or not.
I guess so. It depends on how close they are and how much they would do the
Yeah.
same things. But they talk about how difficult it is because there's not the makeup.
There's not the makeup or the elaborate.
Maybe the elaborate headdress or whatever it is that they wear. So it's like it's a lot trickier to try to like. Hopefully, I look enough like her that no one questions it. You know. But they. I'm
gonna say maybe I'm also coloring it with like. Because we had we had an election in the U.S. where there was like conspiracy theories about like that's not him, it's a clone,
Yeah,
or
right.
like that's not Trump,
There's a
that's not Biden, it's a stand-in, and how people freak out about it.
He's
Like,
already dead.
There's got to be some like Alex Jones like character in Star Wars being that's not Senator Amidala, that's this this other person. Look at the pictures,
Yeah.
but they're right.
Let's compare these, like the circling parts of the face or whatever.
Oh yeah.
But that scene there where Sabe goes into Padmé's apartment or whatever and is sleeping, and then like alarms or whatever go off, his sensors detected someone's breaking in, and they're like into her apartment, then they're into her bedroom, and it's Anakin Skywalker. And I'm like, and he's like, "What are you doing here?"
Oh hey, what's up?
And I'm like, "Man, how are you gonna explain away that you just snuck into a senator's?
Yeah.
Why? Why are you here?"
She's like, "Well, I'm currently in my PJs." He's like.
So I really like that.
Yeah.
But it was one of those.
Their interactions were fun. I mean, awkward, extremely awkward, but very fun.
Yeah.
Because they both have Padmé's affection, as it were.
Yeah. And then it turns into like, I hope he doesn't reveal that I've been hiding as this or anything. And then he's also, I think, worried about like, hope she doesn't reveal that we've been doing a thing,
Yeah.
So. But the unveiling of the secret, and like, there was such a struggle with Padmé wanting to tell and not wanting to tell, and like trying to figure out that stuff, that them finally getting a chance when everything's done and they come back together and they're swapping back, they sit down, they have that discussion, they talk about Anakin, and there's like one of the last lines that Sabe says to her was like, "My hands will always be yours. Please don't ask for them again."
Yeah.
And I was like, man, it's such a, because there's this relationship, and whether it's completely friend platonic or there's something more between them, there's that thing where like Sabe's like, "I will always come to help you and do whatever you ask of me.
Yeah.
I need you to not ask of me for anything else." And there was just something so sad about that, where she's like, "I want to be here and help you and be with you and all this kind of stuff. And
if you ask me, I'll do it.
I will always do it.
But please don't.
But don't do that anymore." And it is like, it's that separation thing that we were talking about, where it's like, this feels like them, whether it's like a breakup or a growing apart or whatever it is, like they both have different things they're wanting to do.
Yeah.
And that part hit me where I was like, I didn't expect it to be as sad as it was for these handmaidens and stuff,
Sure.
And we have Sasha and Yane who are together, which was really cool. But I guess I didn't expect, like, I know the handmaidens aren't really around in the movies, so they got to go somewhere. But this one was a little heavier than I thought it would be. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, but I really like that part of her, I guess, confessing that I will always be here for you every time you ask, but I really need you not to ask.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yep.
But there's also a few little cool things. They mentioned what's that senator that they have, that Padmé has a senator friend, and I know the name from Clone Wars, and I didn't write it down, and I can't think of it right now, but there was a nod towards like a senator. I think it was Senator Fa. Was that it?
Onakana Farr.
Was that the one they mentioned this one? I think it might have been.
They say, like,
the Rodian.
Yeah, they're like, he's acting a little strange the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
Anaconda Far.
And I'm
That's
pretty
what it
sure
is.
he joined the Separatists, right? Wasn't there something with that in the
Yeah,
Clone Wars?
he thinks that the Separatists are going to be able to give Rhodia better things.
Yeah, there was something like that. I was like, I remember that name from
Yeah.
Clone Wars and stuff. And I didn't write it down, and I
Uncle
probably would have
Anno.
misspelled it anyway. But
Yeah.
but I think that they were also mentioned
Little
in a previous
details in
book
there.
too, in one of the, I think in the party maybe. I forget. It's been a little while.
You know what I liked the one part where I can't remember which handmaiden it was, but it was like, isn't R2 like Naboo property? It's like, where's R2? It's like, oh, it's with Anakin, and Anakin's droids with us, haha, you know. And then Sabe kind of later goes like, well, that makes sense when she finds out. But it was funny to think like R2 officially is owned by not Amidala, because Amidala doesn't own Theed. You know, she's an elected queen. So can she give away R2? Like, how does ownership with droids work?
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, you know what? I never really thought about it in the movies because, like, in Episode 2, R2 is there with Amidala and like is helping with that, right?
Yeah.
Like he didn't go with Anakin and Obi-Wan at the end of Episode 1, right?
Yeah. No,
So,
it's
like-
only in the Clone Wars that they trade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh yeah, there's 3PO, which Anakin built,
Yeah.
staying at Padmé's place.
Yeah. And I love that 3PO, he has a line in here, like he's finally starting to do like real protocol stuff, and he's like, I was literally built for this. I was so happy for him.
He's like, I did it.
And Nexus also brought up something that I loved in this. Nexus asks, is this the book where we find out that Palpatine has a stress stone in his office that he fires his lightning into when he's mad?
He did shoot lightning in his office, right?
Yeah, that dude's got to get that out of there, you know?
I didn't think about it being like a
It's
a
a
stress
stress
ball,
stone.
but
Yeah,
instead
it's
it's
like
a stress stone he can shoot
it's
lightning
like
into.
a punching bag. You gotta get that out of there, or else that's gonna blow up in your next meeting or something. You know, you're gonna be sitting there as this guy talks and talks and talks, and you're just you know, you can't keep that in. You know,
You gotta let it out sometime.
let
That
it
way
out.
you can keep the chameleon aspect of you there.
exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I guess
Yes,
that's true.
Nexus,
That is
you are.
That is funny
correct.
though.
That is exactly how I thought of it too, and I was very, very, very happy with it. What else? We had Sister in this. The clone sister?
Oh, yeah. I kind of
Yeah.
forgot about that. But yeah, there was so is Sister a female clone or is it a male clone who has transitioned
Trans, yeah.
into female? Is that what's happened here? Because they didn't really dive into it a whole lot.
No.
But they said about like sister, my brothers all go with me, and then I was thinking about oh no, I just lost it. Bad Batch, Omega.
Omega.
And I was like, oh, that one was a female clone. And
Yeah.
they talk about brothers and stuff in there. So I
Sure.
was like, just trying to figure out sister
And they
a
also
little bit.
mentioned like what happens, like they at least reference like what does happen with like odd clones. I'm like, oh, this is before Bad Batch.
Yeah, yeah. So like this
Yeah.
is like I wasn't sure if it was like a clone
Yeah.
who was like,
With the talk of like, I thought like they went more to gender identity like while they were having that. So I think it's meant to be like male clone but trans.
okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. Which I think like, and you know, with the other clones, I love that there's no controversy there. Like the clones are just like, yeah, sure, that's fine,
Yeah.
sister. You know,
Yeah,
because we're all brothers.
yeah.
you know,
because we're all brothers. Yeah, she's your sister.
Yeah.
yeah. I was just wondering whenever it was going through, because like there's been we saw through Clone Wars and stuff. Like sometimes the clones just develop differently whenever they are
Yep.
created or born or however it is they pop
Yeah.
out of the tubes and stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was just like trying to figure out exactly how this works, and they went into it some, but not a ton. And I was like, I think I get it.
Yeah, I was curious what your thoughts were because I had discovered Sister a while ago while doing some studying. you
Okay.
know. So I knew Sister was out there.
Was there? Did we have sister in Brotherhood?
There in Brotherhood, I think there was a reference to, but I had known more about the scene from this book.
Okay, because I feel like sister
Yeah.
was mentioned somewhere, but I can't remember why or
I
what they
believe
said
so.
about it.
And I think that we've talked about it a little bit before, but here you kind of get more of the actual, the major reference to it.
okay,
which-
so this is the first time that she would have been
Yeah,
in one of the books.
I believe
right?
so.
Because the Brotherhood came out after this book.
yes,
Is that right?
I believe so.
I think. Okay.
Yeah, but so she was created here, but she appears in Brotherhood. But yeah, when I read it or when I was listening to it, I was just kind of like, huh, cool, you know. But I also you get that feeling of like, man, I can like, it's like Obi-Wan. He can like suddenly like feel like the anger of a lot of people that don't like that type of thing to show up in their Star Wars books. You know, as I read it, I was just kind of like, ooh, I'm glad I'm reading this years later and on to deal with that in the reviews.
Sure, yeah. I wonder if there are others.
I mean,
You know,
sure,
like
numbers wise.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like
Yeah.
considering like how many clones there are, like
Yeah.
like there's bound to be more, I would think, right?
Sure, I would say so.
All right, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I also wonder, like, yeah, I don't know. I'm
mean,
just trying to think of like all the different, like, if you have like gay clones, and you have like we had one that was like broke off and like had his own family, you know, like all these different stories. I was like, I wonder how often these will, if there are others that has been dived into and discussed.
I mean,
in, like,
considering how much the clones value their, I mean, because they are so similar, they value their individuality so much more than like me and you probably do. You know,
Sure,
it's like if I'm different than you are, you're gonna be like, well, that makes sense. Look at all the differences.
If there were billions of people that were just me,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I get.
Yeah,
I guess
then
that's
like
true.
it wouldn't be a matter of contention; it'd be a matter of celebration, which I think makes perfect sense for like a unit like the Clone Army. You know?
Yeah.
They're just not concerned with that type of thing. They literally have better things to fight about.
Yeah. What was someone in chat, what was it that Anakin said? Anakin, he used trans, but it wasn't transgender. He used trans something else, didn't he?
Yeah, I can't
I
remember.
forgot about that until just now. I can't remember what the word was he used. Transcending, that's what it was. Thank you. The Jedi are all about transcending things. I don't think we can complain if you transcended gender. Yeah,
Gotcha.
that's what it was.
That's what it was, yeah.
Huh. Okay. No,
yeah, I remember
like
them specifically pointing out gender.
Okay. I like the wording of that. Then that's interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that is a Jedi
Yeah.
way. Huh. All right. That's cool.
And yeah, I now that I'm thinking about like the beginning of our conversation today, it's like, well, if you're upset that happened, has that happened in more than 3 cultures? Well, we could put it in there.
Yeah, right? Yeah, for sure. No, Gregory's too, like, imagine, like, being, like, you know how they all have their own name?
Yeah.
Imagine being another transcending gender clone and being like, oh, I want to go by sister. It's like,
That taken.
Already taken. What? Damn, okay, and I got to think. What's
What's it
my...
going to be? Sister, like on the Nickelodeon show.
So,
Or
okay.
was that Disney? I can't remember.
That was Disney,
That
yeah.
was Disney. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, all
can't-
right, that's cool. No, and like I forgot about that quote, and then whenever they said about creating the word transgender, I was like, oh yeah, I remember now.
Yeah.
I forgot Anakin said something about that.
I don't know why. I know why. I'm dumb. Whenever like Anakin was like sister, Kat Tabor. I love Kat Tabor. She did the audiobook. So the whole thing that I have about like there's no real plot in this, like it doesn't work when I'm listening to the audiobook because it just sounds like Padmé's telling me stuff.
Yeah.
It's like Padmé's reading her own Wikipedia entry to me. Is what it feels like.
I love having like voice
Yeah.
actors from Clone Wars
Yeah.
doing the voices of the like reading these books. Like if it's like having to be Anakin or having to be Padmé or any of that, I love having them do it.
Yeah.
But
So but I also love that means that we get Kat Tabor's Yoda. We get Kat Tabor's Jar Jar Binks, when they speak in the book. I'm like, that's cool. But whenever I was reading the sister scene, I kept going to Darth Vader. Sister.
oh yeah,
So you have a twin like, hey, that's characters known for saying the word sister.
Yeah, right?
Because I have that so clearly in my head. Yeah.
yeah. No, having Catherine Tabor read this was great. I love that. And it just it's the same with Ashley doing the Ahsoka novels, where I'm just like I'm just hearing Ahsoka in these books, which is so good, especially when it's mainly focused on them anyway.
Yeah.
And then having handmaidens in this one, like, well, Sabe has to be like like Padme anyway, so it
She
works
does.
too whenever she talks. So no, I really enjoyed the novelization of this a
Me too.
lot.
Yeah.
But I think I agree though. Like, there is a general sense where I'm like, this book was fine. Like, there's a lot of things that I like about the book, but it wasn't a thing where it's like the plot of it is like a big like Brotherhood. I enjoyed the story and the plot of that, and it felt like being in another Clone Wars episode.
Agreed.
Right? Where this one just felt like I should watch the movies and read these and have a better understanding than of Padme and characters adjacent to Padme.
Yeah.
We even got more Typho.
Yes, Gregory Typho.
And Typho's, I don't think, in the movies very much. Like
Despite having an extra movie over Panaka.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's not really in there very much. You get much more Panaka time, I think.
Yeah,
than
he's
you do
barely in
Typho.
episode 3. I think you hear
Is
him.
he in episode 3?
I think he's only in the scene where Padme's like, anyway, I'm leaving. Like, before she gets to Mustafar. He's like, all right. I feel like that's all you see of Typho.
All right, huh?
Yeah.
But yeah, in the second movie, he's there a little bit in the beginning, and then he kind of just disappears
Yeah.
because Anakin takes her, and they're
Sure.
wherever they're going. But yeah, I do like getting a little bit more Typho and getting more of like that, all the people of Naboo and like how they're connected and what they're doing and the wives and all that kind of stuff too. I really enjoy that.
Agreed.
So I think all of that, if you want like more Padme in general, like make sure you watch the movies. But I don't think reading these books alone, like sometimes I think you can just read some of these books and you're just good. If you never watched Star Wars and you read like the Brotherhood book, I think it probably works okay.
Same.
But sometimes I think like these books here, like you probably need the movie knowledge for
Agreed.
it to really work because you don't get the full, even in the occupation of Naboo. Like, I don't feel like you get the full story of the occupation of Naboo from the book, but I think you get a lot of extra stuff to tie in with the movie that you didn't know before.
What a perfect example of what a living mythology is, because you can't appreciate the book unless you've seen the movie. But once you've read the book, you can now go see the movie and appreciate it more.
Yeah.
It's so circular in that regard.
I never read it, but I remember you talking about after reading Plagueis, watching episode 1
Big
felt
changes,
different.
Yeah.
And
a little less so now that it's not necessarily canon.
Sure, yeah.
But I still think of those moments.
Yeah. But I think this does the same thing for Padme throughout the prequel trilogy that she's in.
Yeah.
So,
and while like, if someone came up to me and it's like, I didn't really like those books, I don't like the format or the way they were writing, I'd be like, one, like I get you, I kind of felt the same way. Two, they are junior novels, like these are officially young adult novels. These ones, so I think they're trying not to be as challenging. But two, and I don't mean for this to sound negative, but like I said it a little bit ago, it was like having Padme read me her Wikipedia entry, which it could sound negative, but as a person that enjoys to read Wikipedia entries in my free time for funsies, this was a great experience.
I think a better comparison instead of Wikipedia is that we got to read Padme's diary. You know what I mean? Like we got to read like, okay, what did she write about after she married Anakin?
Yeah.
What were her thoughts before then?
I agree with your analogy. I only said the Wikipedia just because like I often will go and like I'm learning facts about characters I don't otherwise know about, but not necessarily in a narrative. You know?
Yeah.
So, but I get you. I think the journal's probably more apt.
The diary or journal thing I think works well because of that. Like you might not be getting every detail, but you're getting a general sense of how they felt and like what they thought about. But then you go to the movie and you get to watch what happened. Yeah. And then you read this and you get to like get in their head more. It's one of my favorite things about like in Brotherhood. Like I thought they did a great job describing when a Jedi was using the Force and how exhausted it made them and what it felt like to do a big jump or to do whatever it is, where like you don't get that in the movies. And sometimes you're just like, why that Jedi die?
Sure.
You know? It's like because they get tired too, you know?
And with that being, I think Brotherhood was our first Badonkagonk book, right?
Was it the first Badonkagonk?
It was one of them.
It was early on. We also had High Republic that we did too.
It was either Light of the Jedi or Brotherhood.
I think Light of the Jedi might have been first, and I think Brotherhood was the first High Republic book we did, right?
I think it was, and then we did Light of the Jedi. But
okay, maybe
I do remember it being like you really responded to the feelings of the Force, like written. And I remember being like, that's in a lot of them, but this is one of your first ones.
Yeah.
So that makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fun books. Would recommend for anybody that wants to learn more about Padme.
Yeah. And her handmaidens.
Especially her handmaidens.
Yeah. I think the first book does a great job of introducing you to the handmaidens, and then the rest of the books do a good job of, especially Sabe's story, which I kind of hope like maybe we get more of her at some point because she was, I think, my favorite character through the books, minus Padme.
Sure.
Of course, I loved Padme, but I've loved her since the movies. You know.
Yeah, I mean, if we can tease anything for the future, and for you guys, again, make sure you're coming along with us as we catch up, because a lot of people out there don't know any of the expanded stuff. We'll catch up with Sabe somewhere else in a different medium, and from what I understand, it's good that we've read these books first.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that sounds cool then.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope she shows up in the cartoons.
In the cartoons. All right. Well, from book to, I should say, a book that tries to showcase more of a character, let's go into what the other parts of the Star Wars fandom has to say about Padmé Neberry, or Padmé Amidala, or Padmé Skywalker if you what if it. These are our top 5 Padmé moments.
Padmé moments.
Yeah.
This was kind of tough because, like,
I think this was my toughest top 5, top whatever we've done.
Yeah, I think so too because Padmé's a little bit more unique than most of the ones we've done. Where, like, you know, it's not necessarily. I don't think when I was going through this about, oh man, this was one of my favorite fights that they did, or this was one of my favorite, like, oh, this was a badass Dooku quote that he did, you know, or something like that. A lot of Padmé stuff too is like, I think for me, like, what she was meaning, what the meaning is behind what she's doing, like her being a senator, her being a queen, like she's trying to also be level-headed, and like she has some cool action moments, especially like in Attack of the Clones, like she does some cool stuff. In Clone Wars, she does some cool stuff, but
super cool stuff.
I don't think that that's always necessarily her best time to shine is in those kind of moments. So this was kind of tough to kind of go through and look into.
Agreed.
And find moments and
a character whose life is literally defined by the service of others, like, you know, what she can do for others. A lot of my options are when she's being selfish.
Sure.
Because that's the only time that she can really say, like, this is who I am versus this is what I want for others.
Yeah.
Which is a very admirable thing that I had. It took me so much effort to try to find those moments.
Yeah. And I think going through these books kind of made more of that apparent to me. I don't think I really thought about how selfless Padmé is throughout like all the movies.
I get you.
Until reading these books and really getting into her head and like kind of getting that idea. Yeah. And I don't know if that's necessarily how oh my gosh. Padmé Amidala was played by Natalie Portman. I don't know if that's necessarily how she was trying to portray whenever she was playing Padmé, but after having these books and like what they're kind of putting into like Padmé and her in between those moments,
I get you.
I think really put that into my head where I'm like, man, that kind of sucks of like how much she pushes for everyone else.
Yeah. One, I enjoyed being part of your process right there where you were trying to remember the name. That was really cool. Two, like, yeah, I agree. Like, I think Padmé's biggest strength, especially in the Phantom Menace, is what a lot of people don't like about her, and what the books emphasize is that when she's Amidala, she's playing a part.
Yeah.
When she's Padmé, she's more honest.
Yeah.
You know, and by definition of how the story goes, you don't necessarily know when is which. But one of my moments, if we want to go ahead and get started, is from Star Wars Episode 1, where Padmé is just being as honest as possible, being as her as possible. It is on Tatooine with Qui-Gon Jinn. They're talking about what they're going to do, and Padmé's like, I don't think the Queen would be cool with us entrusting, you know, all of our hopes and dreams in this little boy. And then Qui-Gon's just like, we doesn't need to know.
Yeah, I don't approve.
And then she sits there, and it's when he walks away. She does it to herself. Padmé never speaks about herself, ever. But, like, in that moment, she gets to sit there and be petty and say, like, well, I don't approve, you know? And I love that we can take that moment and add or compound to, like, does Qui-Gon know?
Sure. And first time watching that, you're just like, well, she doesn't agree, and she's one of the handmaidens, but whatever. You know, Qui-Gon's going to do it. Yeah. But then you watch it later on, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
She was saying that, too, because she's like, I can't say that I'm the queen.
Yeah.
But I don't approve of this. And all I can say to him is that the queen, you know? And it's like I have to bite my tongue, and I can't do anything.
I love that moment. It's one of the few moments in that trilogy that Padmé gets to not be perfect, or as perfect as her elected responsibilities ask of her.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite top five.
Okay. In my 5, my 5th one I took from Clone Wars.
Clone Wars.
Which was from Heroes on Both Sides. I don't necessarily have like a specific moment, I guess, except for the fact that she's willing to go and talk to a separatist, like, senator.
Yeah.
And try to find an agreement out of this war and find another way. And this is more of a, I guess, selfless, maybe selfish, because she doesn't want a war either, I guess. But she's willing to go and make this dangerous trek to talk to Bontari.
Yeah.
And attempt a collaboration between the two of them. And
let's actually solve this diplomacy.
Yeah.
Not, you know, our heads of state, our secret Sith lords that make it not happen. What if we actually just... because this is the one that she has to like have Ahsoka like help her sneak her way on, right?
And Ahsoka the whole time is not necessarily for it because it's a separatist.
Exactly.
You know,
yeah.
and there's such this stigma on like we're the Republic, they're the separatists, they're the bad guys, and you learn as a viewer too because. I mean, like we said about Trade Federation, right? Trade Federation, ever since episode 1, like those guys are the bad guys.
Yeah.
And this one here, from Padmé, you get to learn, especially that that's not the case. There are separatists who are they're just trying to live too, and they just don't agree with the Republic. But because of these crazy Sith overlords that are manipulating everything, they don't necessarily know everything that's going on, and they're at odds with each other.
Exactly.
And I love that Padmé is willing to take that risk, and Ahsoka helps her with it, but to go and try to broker this deal, and it all ends with tragedy.
It does,
which sucks. But I love that Padmé is willing to risk as much as she can to help the galaxy.
It's one of the most like non-essential but important arcs of the Clone Wars. Is like this has to be attempted. Like we have to do something like this, or it kind of makes all the battle episodes and stuff kind of ring untrue. Like. It's only like war is inevitable because we can't agree. But if you find, like you said, like if we find out that these heads of states are really just Sith Lords working for each other to profit off of our misery, it's like, well, maybe we should try another avenue of communication, which is illegal. You know,
it's like
I think it was very important to keep that there because. Unfortunately, we miss out on the rebellion scenes from Revenge of the Sith, where Padmé literally is building the rebellion in the behind the scenes of the Senate. But this, I feel like, gives a much needed push of like sometimes like the right thing and the way the government wants to do things is not going to be the best way, and it's important for a politician to do that. You know, Padmé is primarily a politician.
Yeah, because so much like you were going through that, but it made me think of. In the book that we just read, there's a moment where they're talking about like, oh yeah, they're calling it the Clone Wars. Like, oh yeah, I need a catchy name so you can sell more hollows. You know, like it's not about trying to find any way to broker peace or anything like that. It's like, well, what can we get out of this? And they don't know that all the higher ups are working on it together. You know?
Yeah. Who named the Clone Wars?
I don't know who did. The media.
Because Yoda is the one that says it.
Begun the Clone Wars have. Yeah.
Now, did someone like hear him say that, or
does he
like
say that after someone else?
Was he on the elevator up to the tower, being like, "Oh, Clone Wars is starting"? Like, "Oh, Clone Wars, sure, cool."
That's a good name. All right, I guess a good name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm curious.
Not sure either.
All right. Yeah, that was a good moment. That is on my list, but as an alternate, so I'll be good. Aaron.
So was my. Well, I don't approve.
Okay. This will be my number 4. My number 4 is I'm kind of in the same boat where like you mentioned like, well, it's not just like one moment as opposed to like a big scene or a story part.
Because like with mine there, it could be like, well, it's because she decided to go. That moment of her doing that action is great.
This is a hard list for me to create because I don't love the way that Padmé is treated in relation to her relationship with Anakin sometimes.
Okay.
In that her responses to his fascism is like, you know, sometimes.
Okay. Like in the field?
Yeah, like in the field, you know, and it's just
like you sound like a dictator. It's like, oh, well, maybe that's what they need, you know? It's like, oh, you're joking.
Sure. You know, like, it's hard for me to like, well, I guess, they got the chemistry, but like, I feel like, how is that red flag not being like
Padmé, there might have been a couple signs.
Yeah, exactly. And the Nexus is right. There's a whole damn meme about it. But all that being said, I love the moment in Revenge of the Sith where Obi-Wan comes to Padmé and says, you know, I've seen the holo recordings. Anakin's there. He's killing younglings. He's done this. I love Padmé's denial of that. Like, she says, I don't believe it. I can't. Padmé, I feel like, is a character. I mean, almost every other character, you really get to see their flaws. Like, her only flaw is Anakin Skywalker. I saw someone put, like, Anakin Skywalker is Padmé's only blind spot in her entire character arc. And I don't think anything personifies that probably more, unless you're, like, talking about, like, you know, I killed them, all of them, not just the men, but the women, the children, you know, and she's just like, yeah, everybody gets angry, you know? But this one, at the very least, I love that it's a selfish thing, because when she says, I don't believe you, I can't, she's admitting, like, there's a part here where, like, if I if I admit that I'm wrong there, like my greatest weakness is my greatest downfall. Most people want to say that their weaknesses are the weaknesses, but their strengths outweigh them, you know? But if she admits that's the case, then it's like I'm undoing everything I've ever worked hard for. You know, if I admit that. And I thought that's a really needed moment of humanity that she rarely gets in those movies.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. No, I get that.
Yeah.
No, there's definitely something there with her and Anakin. I mean, in the book that we had, there's a moment where she relates to being like, for a moment, she understands what Anakin felt with the Tusken Raiders.
Yeah.
You know, like there is a connection there that she understands how angry you can be and how things can happen and stuff, but she always pulls back. She always, if there's something that she can investigate, she does that before just denying it. You know, she takes everything with like a grain of salt, but also with an element of truth to make sure that if there's, you know, a chance of this being true, I need to make sure.
Sure.
But in that like there's such a love for Anakin and so much of her, you know, in the book talking about if I was to fall in love with someone, it's going to be hard. Yeah. Like this is the person she cares the most for. It's one of the only selfless things that she's done, and if it is, that what is she going to do? And I think it also kind of feeds in a little bit to she's dying of heartbreak, she's lost the will to live kind of thing, where it's like she was so enraptured and enthralled with Anakin Skywalker that him becoming what he becomes is too much for her to be able to handle, right? It's kind of like one of those things in a way, and if you want to go with the idea of like Darth Vader kills Anakin, so there is no Anakin Skywalker, whenever there's two people who are in love and one of them passes, sometimes that the second person doesn't take too much longer before they pass as well. And sometimes it's that connection they have. And I think Padmé definitely has that connection with Anakin. Agreed. So yeah, that moment there with Obi-Wan where you're like, what do you mean? Obi-Wan's telling you he did it. Yeah. Can't you understand that? It's like, well, I think she can. Sure. But she can't believe it.
And we talked a little bit in the book review about how Padmé so rarely is allowed to act her age. Like, I think it is it's an adolescent thing, like her love for Anakin Skywalker, because she is. I'm not saying that in a bad way. You know, young love is young love.
Sure,
but
she never got to be a kid.
Never got to be a kid. So when that hits, it hits hard.
Yeah,
because she has no wall up against it, really. You know, except for Paulo on the damn beaches or whatever that guy was. You know, the artist. We would swim out into the terrible waters in Naboo. Why would you ever swim?
There's some nice waters there.
No, dude,
just don't go deep.
Have you seen the fish?
Don't go deep.
There's always a bigger fish in Naboo. Anyway, that's mine. That's my number 4.
Okay. Mine for number 4 is back in episode 1. We've gone to the Senate. We've told them what's going on. Senate doesn't want to do anything. What am I supposed to do? And she's like, we're going back to Naboo. And this 14-year-old queen crafts the idea of going back to Naboo and is like, wait, Gungans are warriors? Yeah. And like doesn't fully on her own create a solution, but also kind of comes up with a solution to help her people. And she's like, I can't just wait for how long until the Senate decides, like, well, let's elect the new chancellor. Yeah. Let's do that. And then let's all vote again on what to do for Naboo. Yeah. She takes action and she's 14 years old. And 14. This is an occupation. This is war. Yeah. You know, like I find that to be impressive. Also on the selfless side, like she's doing this for her people. But I think that's like just something like Qui-Gon didn't think about this. No one else seemed to think about it. But she's like, you know what? This Jar Jar Binks, which everyone doesn't like, serves a great and important purpose and leads her to thinking of how we can like get back Naboo and what we can do. Yeah. And it might be a long shot. It might be a Hail Mary. But what else are we supposed to do?
Right. And she's 14. Dude, and that makes, like, when you think about how, in episode 2, we learn how, she served her terms, and then she, is not queen anymore. And Anakin's like, I heard that the people of Naboo tried to destroy their own constitution just so that you could serve more. Yeah. Because you got to think about it. A 14-year-old went to the Senate and deposed its leader for you. Like, the Chancellor affects trillions of beings. It's a big deal that she was able to get that vote of no confidence in for Valorum's leadership. But, like, can you imagine, like, I mean, I don't know. We wouldn't have an equivalent on Earth of
No.
like, the king of the world, was deposed because this small nation is being attacked, and that's how badass their 14-year-old queen is.
Yeah.
Like that's, I didn't know. That's a hell of a thing that she did.
Yeah.
So yeah, that should have been on my list. It's so good. Good job, Aaron. She has that great line like, "I was not elected, to watch my people die and starve while you discuss this in the committee."
Yeah, discuss it in the committee.
I love that line so much.
But you know what I love though too? Like she at the same time is so. It's got to be so hard. She's trying to keep all emotion in check in that, and like we talked about it before, but like going through all of the queen, like the queen's always very emotionless because it helps her to like try to rule a little bit, right? But it also helps to hide how she would act whenever handmaidens are being swapped out and stuff too. If they all act very stoic, it kind of helps to blend that a little bit,
Yeah.
So like in that moment, like she doesn't get super outbursty, but I feel like it's also probably hard to not be super outbursty in that moment where it's like my people are dying and you guys are arguing over, trivial things.
Yeah. All right, what number are we on, Aaron?
3.
My number 3 is from Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Season 6. And it's the Clovis stuff from that season.
Clovis, okay,
yes. One of my favorite Padmé moments of all time, because I wish it happened more. Anakin sees Clovis being a little handsy with Padmé and goes off the deep end to the point that he's going to beat this man to death until Padmé calls for help. And Clovis is taken away. Padmé doesn't like have Anakin get in trouble or anything, but he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and she's like, "You scared me today. Like, you went straight to violence with this." And she says, like, I don't know if this relationship can survive that. Like, Anakin chokes her almost to death at the end of her life. Like, when we watch that, even when I watch it now, I have a bias to Anakin. And I go, like, Padmé, he's not really like that. It's a dark side thing. But her red flag goes up. And this is a woman who I think you can make an argument was killed by her husband.
Yeah. Sure.
I wish this came up more for her character. I wish it wasn't like I killed I killed an entire tribe, even the ones that were innocent, maybe, and she just like, well, to heirs to be human, I wish she had more of a conversation or more of like Anakin, like at the very least, we got to go talk to your father figure Obi-Wan about this because this is not the 10-year-old boy that yelled yippee.
Yeah, right.
This is an angry
who thought I was an angel.
This is a man who just told me that if people disagree with me, they should be made to agree with me.
Yeah.
So I always appreciate the Clone Wars for enhancing, some of the weaknesses of the prequels, but that scene personifies one of my greatest problems with Padmé as a character, in that it happened there, at least. She saw it. And while she still is a character of endless hope, like even when she's sitting there dying and her twins are born and stuff, like she's just like, Obi-Wan, they're still good in him. Like, she doesn't have any reason to believe that, but she still does. It's her greatest strength, but it can be one of her greatest weaknesses, and I love that scene for at least shining a light on it.
It could be that could be that there's still good in him kind of stuff too. Yeah. Like, it's that I can't, right? It's kind of matching with that, but but no, Clone Wars having a moment where she's like, even a little bit of doubt of like, I don't know if this can survive that kind of stuff is great for her to work with. But there's a lot of examples of Anakin like jumping to violence and doing exactly that, where it's like, you could have talked this, you could have had a little bit of diplomacy.
Sure.
But he also stands for it's a weird thing because it's like, well, he will stand for who he cares about and who he loves, and he's always trying to protect them. But then there's also like when that anger comes out.
I feel like, we had a conversation a couple of Badonkagonks ago about like what's the true dynamic between Anakin and Vader, like. We sometimes like chalk up all the bad things Anakin's ever done and say, oh, that's Vader. That's the Vader in him, But I'm guilty of not letting Anakin own those mistakes sometimes because I have the Vader thing in the future to place it on, and I can go, it's gonna happen. He's gonna be dark,
Yeah.
But like in terms of like a relationship, like I feel bad for Padmé.
Yeah. Well,
you
it's
know?
exactly what
I
Yoda
feel
said.
real bad for him. It's a very tragic story.
Like, there's the moment when they're interviewing him.
Yeah.
And they talk about the fear, and he talks about his mom. And as we go through episode 2, he
Mm-hmm.
loses his mom.
Yeah.
And all that fear that he had and what he was worried about, never seeing her again or her dying, like that all comes to fruition. And then exactly the path that Yoda lays out as to where fear goes is what Anakin falls into.
Yeah.
And he personifies that.
But that all comes from a slave's mentality, which is not his fault that he was raised that way.
Sure.
You could say it's the Jedi's fault for training him anyway, despite having these issues.
Sure.
You know,
which is also why they didn't want to train him, right?
And it's also like the tragedy of being a Jedi is that if you want to feel the fullest, you actually can't use this power.
Yeah.
Because it's not fair to other people that you can use it and put your will over others. You know. Right. Okay, yeah, that's my 3.
That was 3.
Yep.
My 3 is going back to the first of the trilogy of books that we read.
Okay.
So that was Queen's Peril.
Queen's Peril, sure.
Queen's Peril.
Gotcha.
One of my favorite things, and I kind of mentioned it a little bit here, I think, but there is, towards the beginning of the book, we have Padme and Panaka talking, and she has just been elected queen.
Yes.
And Panaka has already gone and...
Queen Shadow was the first book, is what...
Was Shadow the first book? Yeah. That might have been. Okay.
Again, chronological.
Yeah. Yeah. So the very first book, though, she just got queen.
Yeah, Peril is the Phantom Menace, but Shadow took place, or was written before this one. I know it's confusing, but I understand.
Okay. Yeah. The one that takes place during the Phantom Menace.
I was trying to clarify, and I think it just muddied the map.
Okay, so this one here is Panaka has scouted out Sabe during that part, right? And he's introducing this idea of the Sabe being a handmaiden, and they could swap places and all this kind of stuff. I love that Padme, this also kind of goes with like her going back to Naboo. This is also this 14-year-old who is talking to her security advisor and is like, we need more handmaidens. And he's like, why? And I love that Panaka's like, this is a test. Like, he's realizing this is a test from the queen.
Yeah.
But she's like, she crafts the idea of like having more handmaidens will make it so much easier to swap out and do things rather than just having one handmaiden and then that handmaiden is just gone.
Yeah.
And it's another one of those things where it's like the mind of Padme and being able to think out like what are the outcomes, what can we do, and in conjunction, I guess, with all this is figuring out as all the handmaidens join in what they all can be and talking it out with all of them. It kind of becomes like a joint project that they all kind of figure out and fall in line with. Yeah. But it all started with Padme being like, we need more handmaidens because of the idea you have is almost there, but it's not quite good enough, security officer, you know? And if it wouldn't have been for her having this idea, the whole handmaiden thing may have fallen flat. The attack on Naboo may have succeeded, and they might have caught the queen, and they might have made her sign that treaty and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And I just think that
that's good.
Her having that moment also shows that this little girl is really smart. When this guy's whole job is making sure she's protected, she can take it a little step further and go a little further with, like, what all can we do with this idea that you have.
Yeah, I like that one.
I just really like that.
That's a really good one. I actually don't have anything from the books on my list, but I did have an honorable mention, which was just a quote from Queen Shadow, which is evil. I've fought evil. That's easy. I shot it. It's apathy I can't stand, which I think really sums up Padme.
I've shot evil.
Like, evil, I can deal with evil. I can recognize evil. I can debate evil. But apathy, when you, like, you know the facts, but you don't care. Like, you can't. That's why democracy or liberty dies, to thunderous applause. Like, they don't care. Yeah. I care, others care a lot, but, yeah. So that's my honorable mention there, just to piggyback off of yours from the book.
Well, you named another honorable mention.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you said thunderous applause. Unless that's not an honorable mention for you.
That's not one of mine.
That was one that I wrote down on mine where I'm like, you know what? This
yours.
is the one people always talk about.
It's a gorgeous line.
But I love that.
For me, it's more of a George Lucas line than it is a Padme one. I don't know why I think that. I'm like, hell yeah, George. Good job, buddy.
Sure. I get what you mean. But I think, too, like, it really works with Padme where she's like,
you're right.
She's believed so much in the Republic and what democracy can be. And then she's seeing everyone falling for this.
Yeah.
And if the whole rebellion building thing would have been in the movie, I think it really fits well, next to this, where it's like, this is how democracy dies. Like, well, we can't just let this end here, you know. And she makes a rebellion with that. But yeah, I think the thunderous applause is a great quote from Padmé.
Fantastic. That's one of your honorable mentions.
Yeah.
All right, so I gotta go to my number 2. Aaron, my number 1 and number 2 are so close together. I'm not sure which one to pick.
Oh, I thought you meant like
No.
literally like
No.
this one happens, and then you know what, this one happens.
Like I like these equally. And
Okay.
again, I was kind of struggling of like, what are my favorite moments? And I feel like one of these options is like an overthought, not necessarily like a specific Padmé moment. So maybe I'll save that one for my number 1, just to keep the mystery. So my second one is Attack of the Clones, and Anakin, who, like Mace Windu, is looking at him and being like, don't go anywhere. Protect the queen. That is your mandate. Do nothing else. And Anakin's like, dang it. Anakin loves to break the rules, but he's not good at it.
Sure.
But you know who's really good at breaking rules and no one knows she does? Padmé. And she goes, no, he gave you orders to protect me. I'm going to get Obi-Wan.
I'm going to go get Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
You better come with me and protect me.
Like that is one of my favorite interactions in that whole movie. That has a lot of interactions of Anakin and Padmé.
Sure.
Some of them fall flat for me. Some of them don't. But that one gives me such joy because it's like Anakin, like, I feel like Anakin, like, he's been infatuated with her, but at that point he realizes, like, oh my God, she would be really good to have around in like a sticky situation like this. What a great thought, you know? Because Mace Windu, I'm sure they got back, and Mace is probably sitting there like, Anakin, I told you, and Padmé can come up like, actually, you know, and Mace has to be like, okay, citizen, you know, walk away.
I feel like it mirrors a little bit of that whole like, Qui-Gon told me to stay in this cockpit, and that's what I'm gonna do.
Exactly,
you know,
yeah.
like it's one of those kind of things, and yeah,
it does,
I do really
but
like that.
I just like it from someone that so successfully, not doesn't always tell the truth to people, you know? Like Padmé, like she has a heart of gold, but like I said, like, is it strange that like she doesn't, like she tells like dignitaries of other planets, like, this is me, but it's not you, you know? So I like that. I've always loved that moment. So that's my number 2.
All right.
Yeah.
No, it's really good. Okay. Number 2 for me is I guess after that one. One of my favorite, and this one's more on. Well, let me just. It's in the Geonosis arena.
Patronaki arena.
I love where Anakin and Obi-Wan are tied up, and Anakin's like, but what about Padmé? And Obi-Wan looks over and is like, she's got things handled, and she like she's undone herself. She climbs up to the top of this thing. She's fighting a Nexu. Like all these things that she does there. It's kind of, this is the one that I think is different from my other moments, where it's less about like her thinking and her like, this is actually like she's able to handle herself. It's not just about like, how about this idea? Or I need to go back and help, and I'm going to craft an idea for it. It kind of parallels a little bit with her willing to fight on Naboo with Panaka and push into the throne room. But this is like, you're right. There's no one else to help her in this situation necessarily. They're all three tied up. And this is Padmé like, all right, I'm going to get myself out of here, and then we'll figure out what the next step is. And I just really like that she also can handle herself.
Yeah.
And also, I think this mirrors her and her handmaidens from the book, where like, where did she learn to do all this different stuff? How can she pick a lock? How can she, all that
you're
stuff?
Right.
She's learned so much from her handmaidens, and I think that this is kind of that collective of all these handmaidens have gifted her enough talents that she's able to also do this.
You've convinced me. That's a great moment. I think that I've allowed, and this is primarily a thing that I've done in my adulthood, I've allowed my annoyance of George Lucas being like, I want her to look hotter.
Oh,
have the
can
next
the cat
like,
cut off her
have
shirt?
the kitty cat, like, and I can see her midriff,
Sure, yeah.
She's so much hotter, we can sell the toys better, like, I think I've let that infect that scene a little bit too much for me, because you're right.
I get that.
It adds in all that stuff. My favorite tone poem, we went over those a couple months ago. One of my favorites is Padmé's, where he's like, there are things I cannot do. I cannot let people suffer. I cannot let this happen. But there are certainly things I can do,
Yeah.
She can do that. I'm not defenseless against this monster. This monster needs to worry about me, baby, and these abs, baby. Like that thing cuts off, but it keeps the abs.
Yeah. No, I mean, and this is like, this is also after, and hopefully this isn't one of yours too, because I thought about it being, but like, just before they get rolled into there, she confesses her love to Anakin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is this a moment where it's like, well, we're probably going to die.
We're going to die.
I don't want you to not know I love you before I do this.
Anakin's thinking like, I need to kiss someone before I die.
But they have that moment, and then she also, like, I'm going to put this bobby pin in my mouth. I'm going to make sure I'm ready to escape and figure out something. I'm not giving up. I have told him because we could die here, and I want him to know that, but I haven't given up yet, you know? So I just like that she doesn't give up easy.
It's a good one.
And it also, like I said, like I think also after reading these books, it just kind of compiles all the handmaiden stuff that she's gone through and learned and worked with.
I keep using the phrase a generational fandom scene, but you can look at that for so many different ways with all the ways that we've enjoyed Star Wars.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay. Well, I'll go to my number one. I think it's pretty unconventional. I don't know if anybody has this moment as one of their favorite Padmé moments.
Okay.
But
well, then I'm not worried about it
being
being
these lists are only valuable whenever they are individualistic, so I think I got a pretty good one for my number one. Mine is the beginning of episode 2, not after the assassination attempt, right after the assassination attempt, where Padmé is in the office with Chancellor Palpatine and a couple Jedi.
Okay.
And she goes, I think Dooku's trying to kill me. And all the Jedi, these super powerful, this one is 900 years old, like they have the power of the Force and all of their wisdom. And they're like, oh, you dummy. He's a political ideal. He used to be a Jedi. There's no way, you stupid dummy. And Palpatine, the Sith Lord, who has tricked everybody, included these guys right here. The Jedi Counselor is sitting there like, how the fuck does she know that? Because it's a gut instinct. It's not the Force. She doesn't have the Force. Well, we don't think so.
Yeah, and Obi-Wan tracks it all the way down. And who's he find at the end?
Yeah, exactly.
Dooku.
Yeah, Padmé figured that shit out just because she can read people in a way that's not through the Force or through this like crazy, magical intuition. Like she knows politics. She knows actions. She knows like she gets like a feeling from somebody and reads them a different way. Like she gets it in the first 5 minutes. But no one listens to her. That's one of my favorite Padmé moments because she's sitting there like across from powerful Jedi Master, amazing Sith Lord. Bam! I cracked it in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, and sitting right in front of this Sith Lord who's like, I have tricked every. Oh shit.
Yeah, exactly. He's got to be sitting there like, how does she know? I've worked this out. I told Dooku. Dooku told Jango. Jango told Zam.
I also told him to use a different name.
Exactly. Think about like how much he buried that assassination attempt.
Diaz, Sifo Diaz is a part of this,
Newt Gunray wants Dooku to do it. Dooku gets Jango. Jango gets Zam. Zam gets the assassin droid. The assassin droid gets worms. Like they try to hide it so much.
Yeah.
And Padmé in the first 5 minutes is like, it's him.
Yeah, he did it. That one. Man, that's a really good one.
Yeah, that's mine. That's my number one.
I think it makes mine terrible then. No, mine, and I think mine might be recency bias a little bit with the book and everything that we just read.
Yeah, okay.
But what this one did for me around the idea of the wedding, I really liked like all of her thoughts, all of the stuff we talked about where it's like she is always doing so much stuff for other people.
For others, yeah.
I chose the marrying Anakin as like my favorite moment for Padmé. One, it's also really, really important to the story because you don't get Luke and Leia and all that stuff if you don't have this happen.
Yeah.
But two, it is like I think there's not very many like just selfless things that she does solely for herself. You can be like, well, she went to go talk, to Bonteri.
Yeah,
that's that helps stops the war, and that's really good for her, right? Yeah, but it's good for so many people. Yeah. And like her going back to Naboo, is like, oh yeah, that's her home and stuff, right? Yeah, but she's doing it because her people are suffering. She could have just stayed on Coruscant where she was safe and not risked herself to go back. This is, I'm marrying Anakin Skywalker because I love him.
Yeah,
I know that it's not a thing a Jedi should do.
It's bad.
Yeah, it's
she
forbidden.
Shouldn't.
Yeah, all that, right? Like she knows how wrong this is.
It's very wrong.
If not for wrong for her, it's at least wrong for Anakin. And she is aware of all of this, and she does it for herself.
Yeah, for herself.
And I think like the way that this book really describes like her mindset, the things she's thinking about, like everything that she's like looking forward to. Like I love how excited after reading this, like and watching scenes in episode 3, and there's not a ton of scenes of her in episode 3, but she's so excited for the baby. She's talking about going back to that lake house, like all the things that she could get,
Yeah.
and she never gets that.
Can't get 'em.
You know, she never gets to have those kind of moments. This is one happy moment that she gets selflessly just for her, and for Anakin, I guess. But I really like it, not just for the story element, but because of this book describing like just all of her thought processes, and then me, I guess, realizing for the first time how she does so much for everyone else that she never gets to do anything for herself, and this is that moment.
I think you're correct. I think that's a very appropriate number one for Padmé, because I think because I know where Padmé's story goes. Like I look at that scene and I'm bringing all that baggage with me, but that doesn't mean like if we treat her like a real person that had real joy on that day. The value of that joy is not to be understated. Even though it ends in tragedy, so too does all things.
Sure.
You know?
Right? Every marriage will end in some loss of some sort, right? Like, that's what's going to happen.
For the first time in her life, she gets to say, I'm picking for me. And for the first time in Anakin's life, someone picks him for him. Really.
Yeah.
You know, not because he's an amazing, powerful, chosen one that can do this stuff, or that he can, fix everything, so he's a good slave, or he's a really good pilot. It's like, no. I just love you.
Not because he got a lot of midichlorians.
Yeah, exactly. So
not because his master died and he said he was going to do it, so I got to do it now.
So if you put that at your number one, you focus on that moment and how much joy and passion those characters had for each other, it makes all the other contrasting things that happen, I guess it's a little bit easier to have to experience or have to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that was our top 5 Padmé Amidala moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Padmé Nibiri. Padmé Skywalker.
Padmé.
What if?
Padmé. No. I'm really glad that we read through these books. I think they gave me a different viewpoint on Padmé that I didn't have before, which is really good. And I love getting those kind of moments. It's like watching Tales of the Jedi and getting a different viewpoint from Count Dooku than I had from just watching episode 2.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And episode 3. He's in there for a minute. But yeah, I'm glad that we got to go through these. Our next Badonkagonk will not be having a book, though.
No book next Badonkagonk.
It's going to be December 12th. There's not
pretty soon-ish.
Yeah, it's not very far away. There's some holidays and stuff happening. It's been busy holiday season for
very busy.
Blind Wave and Wave Squadron. So there won't be a book, but we are going to talk about Star Wars. So you don't have any homework to do for the next podcast. But December 12th, we'll be back to talk about Star Wars, talk about maybe Star Wars throughout the year, of what we had this year from things, and some extra things, too.
It's been an interesting year with Star Wars, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So a lot to talk about.
And we have Skeleton Crew coming.
Yes, we do.
Which I'm excited for Skeleton Crew, so make sure you guys subscribe for that, because we'll be having reactions here for that as well. But yeah, no book. We'll have a book in January.
No book, but I guess we'll have a comic book video out.
What?
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, everybody. See you next time.
May the Force be with you.